Welcome to NFL Nexus. Today, we are digging into what has to be one of the riskiest, most fascinating, high-wire acts I've seen a front office perform in a long time. We're talking about the Indianapolis Colts. They've made this massive, record-shattering bet on a single player, a bet that can honestly define their franchise for the next half-decade. But here's the kicker, the real twist. At the exact same time, they're making another, completely opposite bet. This is the wild story of a $116 million gamble, a hidden injury, and a front office that seems to be following two completely different playbooks at the same time.
Yeah, it all starts with this number right here, $116 million. Let that sink in. This isn't just a big contract. We are talking about the single richest free agent wide receiver deal in the history of the National Football League. This is the kind of money that screams, this is our guy. He is our future. You just don't write a check this big unless you believe with absolute certainty that this player is a foundational piece, a guy who can literally change the entire trajectory of your franchise. In the modern NFL, this right here is the price you pay for a cornerstone.
So imagine that feeling, right? You just made this huge statement of certainty. But then, what if that certainty gets thrown right out the window? What happens when just 42 days, not even a month and a half, after you sign that historic deal, your brand new 9-figure investment is heading straight to the operating table for major surgery? All of a sudden, the party's over. The celebration stops, and in its place, a super high-stakes race against the clock begins. I mean, the ink on the contract is barely dry, and the Colts' entire offseason plan is now just hanging by a thread. Okay, let's dive into the man at the center of all this, Alec Pierce. Now, to really, truly understand the massive risk the Colts are taking, we need to get something straight. It's not just about how good Alec Pierce was. It's about the absolutely incredible circumstances under which he was that good. You see, the Colts didn't just pay for his past performance. They paid for the spectacular numbers he put up while secretly battling a really significant underlying problem. Before he signed this massive deal, Alec Pierce had already made a name for himself as one of the NFL's absolute premier deep threats. He was the guy. He was the focal point of the Colts' entire passing attack. And when Indianapolis needed a huge play, a play to flip the field or erase a deficit in a hurry, everybody in that stadium, I'm talking the opposing defensive coordinator, the cornerbacks, the fans, and the cheap seats, they all knew exactly where the ball was going. And the crazy part, more often than not, defenses were totally powerless to do anything about it. Let's look at the numbers because they are just staggering. In 2024, Pierce led the entire league with a ridiculous 22.3 yards per reception. Think about that. Every time he caught the ball, on average, it was a first down and then some. Then, in 2025, just to prove it wasn't a fluke, he did it again, averaging 21.3 yards a catch. He was the only player in recent memory, the only one to lead the NFL in that category in back-to-back seasons. That kind of consistent, explosive playmaking isn't just a weapon. It's a strategic advantage that forces entire defenses to change how they play. Safeties have to bail out deep, which opens up everything underneath. It opens up the running game. He's like a gravitational force that just changes the whole geometry of the football field. Okay, but this is the truly shocking part of the story. This is the one detail that just reframes everything we've just talked about. Pierce put up these incredible, league-leading, game-changing numbers while playing through significant chronic pain. His entire 2025 season, a season where he was, statistically, the most efficient big play threat in all of football, was played on a physical foundation that was basically crumbling beneath him. Every single one of those explosive plays came at a very real physical cost. And look, this wasn't just a minor sprain he was dealing with. Colts GM Chris Ballard came right out and admitted it was a constant maintenance issue. He said Pierce had to fight through a lot of pain. Now, for a wide receiver whose entire game is built on explosive cuts, acceleration, and downfield speed, a chronic ankle problem is a major, major red flag. The Colts knew this. They knew he was playing on a compromised joint all season long, which makes their decision to give him that record-breaking contract all the more dramatic and honestly all the more risky. They weren't just betting on the player they saw. They were betting that surgery could make him whole again, maybe even better.
The sheer speed at which this whole situation went from a massive celebration to a full-blown crisis is just stunning. When you lay out the timeline, the sequence of events tells you everything you need to know about the Colts' strategy and the kind of calculated risks they were clearly willing to take. And trust me, the timing here is no coincidence. It's a perfect window into their entire decision-making process. Just look at how fast this all went down. On March 8th, the Colts trade away their star receiver Michael Pittman Jr., a move that clears up a ton of cap space. Then, just 1 day later, March 9th, they turn around and use that money to make Alec Pierce the highest-paid free agent receiver in NFL history. They essentially swapped one star for another, more explosive one. And then, bam, just 42 days later, the bombshell drops. Ballard confirms Pierce has undergone ankle surgery, and a 3-month recovery clock starts ticking, putting his entire offseason and maybe even the start of the season in serious jeopardy.
Chris Ballard's own words here are incredibly revealing. He said, and I quote, "Finally, after consulting with multiple doctors and him, he had a cleanup done." That one word, finally, it tells you everything. This was not a surprise. This wasn't some new injury that popped up. This was the end of a long, difficult internal debate about Pierce's health. It strongly suggests the Colts knew this surgery was a very real possibility all along, and maybe, just maybe, that massive contract turned the possibility of surgery into an inevitability. You simply don't pay a guy $116 million to just manage an injury anymore. You pay him to get it fixed for good.
In this timeline, it puts enormous pressure on the very rigid NFL calendar. A 3-month recovery, that's the best-case scenario. He's guaranteed to miss all of the team's organized team activities, the OTAs. Now, for those of you who might not know, OTAs are basically the non-contact practices in the spring, and they're absolutely crucial for installing the new offense and building that timing and chemistry between quarterbacks and receivers. With Pierce on the sideline, that critical work with quarterback Daniel Jones, it just isn't happening. Any kind of setback, any delay, could jeopardize his participation in training camp, which is without a doubt the most important preparation period of the entire year. The Colts can say they're optimistic all they want, but the reality is there is absolutely zero margin for error here.
So, while all this high-stakes, high-drama stuff with Pierce was unfolding, the Colts were taking a completely different, almost opposite approach in the NFL draft. It's fascinating. They went from swinging for the fences with a 9-figure contract to, well, carefully building a safe, solid foundation with cheap, cost-controlled rookies. This wasn't a separate plan, though. This was the other side of the same coin. This was their way of trying to counterbalance the massive risk they had just taken on the offensive side of the ball.
So here are their draft picks from the second round on. Just look at the positions. After that massive investment in Pierce, the focus shifts almost entirely to the other side of the ball and into the trenches. They grab a tough, super physical linebacker from Georgia and C.J. Allen. They get a versatile safety from a great program at LSU and A.J. Halsey. They're building depth. They're adding solid pieces. But the most telling part of their strategy? They double dip at defensive end in the later rounds. That's a huge sign of their new, low-risk, high-upside philosophy.
And I really want to focus on their approach to the defensive end position because it perfectly encapsulates this dual-track thinking. They waited until day 3 of the draft, the later rounds, and then they selected 2 guys, George Gums Jr. and Caden Curry, in the 5th and 6th rounds. Now, both of these guys are perfect examples of the Colts' low-cost, high-potential draft philosophy, but they represent 2 very different, almost opposing ways to find value late in the NFL draft.
First up, let's talk about the 5th-round pick, George Gums Jr. To really get this pick, you have to understand a metric called RAS, or Relative Athletic Score. It's a pretty cool tool. It essentially boils down all of a player's athletic testing from the combine and their pro day, their height, weight, 40-yard dash, vertical jump, all of it, into a single number from 0 to 10, and it compares them to every other player at their position historically. A score of 9.00 or higher is considered truly elite. We're talking top 10% of athletes ever at that position. So George Gums, who only recently converted from playing tight end, scored a 9.19 out of 10. That is incredible. That ranks him among the most explosive, athletic defensive ends tested since 1987. This is what we call a classic traits-based pick. Gums doesn't have this long track record of amazing production at defensive end, but what he has are the raw physical tools that you simply cannot teach. The Colts are betting that their coaching staff can take this lump of athletic clay and mold him into a productive NFL pass rusher. It's a low-cost lottery ticket with a potentially massive payoff.
Then in the very next round, the 6th, they drafted Caden Curry from Ohio State, and Curry is the complete and total opposite of Gums. Just look at his 2025 numbers. They are staggering. 11 sacks, 16.5 tackles for loss, 46 quarterback pressures, and he did this on a stacked Ohio State defense. This is not a bet on potential. This is a bet on proven, undeniable production. The guy is just a football player. So you might be asking, why did a guy with that stat line fall to the 6th round? Well, it's because he doesn't have those elite, eye-popping athletic traits like Gums. The Colts saw a player who just makes plays over and over again, and they got him at an unbelievable value. It's traits on one hand and pure production on the other.
So there you have it. You've got the massive, risky, headline-grabbing free agent signing on one hand, and then you have the safe, quiet, value-driven draft on the other. When you put these two starkly different strategies side by side, you finally see the full picture of the Colts' offseason philosophy. It's a team that is pulling itself in two different directions, completely by design.
And this lays it out perfectly. On one side, you have the Alec Pierce gamble. Super high risk, but super high reward. Record-breaking money for a player with a known, pre-existing injury concern. It's a pure, unadulterated bet on superstar talent, believing that one truly elite player can elevate the entire offense. Then on the other side, you have their draft strategy. Low risk and foundational. It's built on cost-controlled, late-round picks. It's a bet on building quality depth across the roster. It is a really fascinating, and you have to admit, a potentially volatile mix of pure aggression and cautious prudence.
And it's so important to understand that this wasn't just one decision. It was a whole series of interconnected moves, a domino effect. Trading away a proven productive talent like Michael Pittman Jr. only makes sense if you are absolutely all in on Alec Pierce. And keeping your quarterback Daniel Jones on the franchise tag, which is a one-year, fully guaranteed prove-it kind of contract, directly ties his future in Indianapolis to the health and availability of his new #1 receiver. And then, using your valuable draft picks on defense instead of trying to find a replacement for Pittman, that move right there shows you just how much faith and risk the Colts have placed on Pierce's surgically repaired ankle. Literally every decision they made this offseason hinges on the success of that first massive bet.
So ultimately, the Colts' fascinating two-sided offseason brings us to this one final crucial question. Will this high-wire act of theirs lead to a massive championship payoff, or will their $116 million gamble backfire before their star player even steps back on the field? It's one of the boldest and, frankly, most contradictory team-building experiments we're seeing in the NFL right now, and you can bet the entire league will be watching to see how it all plays out. So what do you think of the Colts strategy? Is it brilliant, or is it crazy? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And hey, if you enjoyed this breakdown, do us a huge favor and make sure to subscribe to NFL Nexus and like this explainer. It really does help us out a ton. Also, if you're looking for a fun and unique gift for any of the football fans in your life, you can help support the channel by purchasing one of our coloring books. They're perfect for kids, grandkids, even adults. You can find them using the link in the description or just by scanning the QR code on your screen right now. Thanks so much for watching.